Good. You.
All righty. Doesn't appear we have anyone here for public comment, so I guess we'll just go ahead and jump into the agenda. See, we have a number of action items. I guess, Mr. Oberst, if you want to go ahead and...
I will, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Ross, Dr. Flores, Mrs. Williams. Ken is at a North Park staff and parents meeting, so it's just me today. And anyways, so first on the agenda is a purchasing agenda, and in support of some of the expenditures asked for on that agenda are some little additional detail on the Richard Lemons contract, the Echo for Change, the Culpa contract, and then security walls for the Franklin campus. So following the purchasing agenda are some additional information on those particular expenditures. So happy to take any questions you may have on the purchasing agenda.
So, I know, Dr. Flores, did you find what you needed in regards?
Yeah, I did. I did the contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Got it.
Ms. Williams, I don't know if you had opportunity before getting here to look at the packet to see if you had any questions about any of the things on the purchase agenda. All right. Okay, well, thank you. Then go ahead then, sir. No questions on the purchase
Questions?
agenda?
Well, it's in your ball court to
All right.
approve or not.
All right, well, I guess there being no questions on the purchasing agenda, I have a motion to move this to the full board for consideration.
So moved. Support.
All right.
I would just like at this point to add, we need to put a new roof on East Leonard, and we're going to use some additional sinking fund dollars that we have left over. The bids were received just today, and so Ken asked me to ask you if it'd be okay if we bring that directly to the board on Monday. He will have that decision made by then, just didn't have time today to do it and get to this meeting, so he'd like to bring it directly to the board on Monday to
Okay,
get
so
that.
he received the bids today.
At the
Just
bids,
had a
didn't have
chance
time to look
But
through
just
them.
wants to look through them and then bring the recommendation to who gets that bid.
Yeah, we can't wait
straight
till the
to
next
Mondays.
finance committee
Okay.
meeting, so I'd like to bring it on Monday.
I don't see that being extremely problematic. Any thoughts from either of you?
No, time
Is-
for me.
Okay.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Item B under the action items then is the blanket purchase renewal. And for Mrs. Williams' sake, since she's new to the finance committee, we have this process in place called blanket purchase. And these are generally ongoing purchases that we may pay over the course of the year, on maybe on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, twice a year, whatever the case may be. All of these purchases exceed the approximately $25,000 threshold to bring to you folks. By bringing the blanket purchase list to you, and then you approve at that point in time. So every time we have to make a payment, say no lease, we don't have to come to the board and get it approved. So it just makes life easier for all of us. So we try to get this done for the next year about this time frame. So the list in your packet includes the 2018-19 budget for that particular blanket purchase vendor. The middle column titled 2018-19 budget, that's where we stand year to date. That's probably through April, approximately, through April. And then the last column there, 2019-20 proposed, is what we are proposing for next year. Now, these are things that we're aware of at this point in time. Obviously, throughout the year, there may be a situation. There are situations where we bring additional purchase or blanket purchases to you, much like the purchase agenda today. These are our best estimates at this point in time, and sometimes we spend more money than what was initially asked for your approval for, and when that happens, we bring the additional amounts we need to the purchasing agenda to get your approval. Things like, common in the last couple of years has been temporary personnel. We've had trouble filling certain positions, really all over the district, and so we make a best estimate of how much we think we're going to spend on temporary personnel, but sometimes it comes in more than what we'd initially estimated would be during this time of the year. So that's what the list is in your packet. Again, there are some from last year that we are not using services next year, or we potentially have changed vendors, so we don't need to renew that particular vendors. The one that comes to mind as I'm looking at now is our shredding services, right? We're changing vendors from Shred It to Shred Hub. So we're asking for a purchase or a blanket purchase for Shred Hub, but not for Shred It, since we will not be using them next year. So there are a few of those within the list also. So our request would be to have this move forward to the board for their approval on Monday. Again, I'll answer any questions you may have.
One question you probably, without Mr. Klein, probably more of a grandparents question, but the second to last page talks about generator repair. I was just more curious on, I guess, what that was.
Where are you at? Second to last page?
Second to last page at the bottom, second line from the bottom, if it prints the same.
Oh, there we go.
I don't know the vendor. That's,
Total Energy Systems.
yeah, that was blocked out on mine, but it's for generator repair is what the reason says.
Yeah, again, that's essentially put a placeholder. We've had generator repairs over the last number of years, maintenance upkeep. And, one of the, again, we've had some, as you know, you may know at least, we've talked about it here, except for me, Mrs. Williams, we don't have, I don't believe, any skilled tradesmen in place anymore. They've retired. It's been tough hiring people. We've been advertising for the last year, and we just aren't getting any help. So some of those things where we historically have had people internally, repair like generators, boilers, those kinds of things. We've had even electrical work we've had a contract out for. So again, we're just using our best estimates of this.
Could I ask how much the aggregate total amount of budget proposed here is? I know you have them individually stated, and perhaps I'm missing it, but is there an aggregate total for all of the blanket renewals? No?
I
Oh.
can get that information.
Okay, I would appreciate knowing that figure. Then my second question deals with Grand Rapids First and the process by which we assign or approve grants or services in this particular category. Since we are looking at renewal, I think I've stated before my concern that when we award services and by way of consultant services or by way of local vendors, that we ought to be targeting or looking at Grand Rapids First companies, and of course I would like it to at some point be considered to look at companies that bid for services, that we have some kind of a bidding process, or at least an opportunity for individuals from Grand Rapids to with their companies to solicit services contracts. This is a significant amount of money. Mm-hmm. Any one of these little contracts, and if you look at, I think I raised the issue before about the interpreting and translation services, and a Grand Rapids First policy there would have helped or enabled some of the local contractors to provide those services, which I think they're very highly capable of, whereas opposed to outside of Grand Rapids entities that provide those services. So just that as an example. But I could take any one of these and say, why couldn't we have people here providing services, and why don't we have or open up the level of competition, which then hopefully provides a better service?
So I know, I guess on the local first piece, and I don't know the policy number, but maybe good for us just to reread that in general to see if we think that policy is being adhered to. I do know there is a local first policy. I don't know the policy number offhand, but.
And that only relates to construction type projects, right, Cheryl?
3,600. It's under the
Yeah.
And so my suggestion is, and perhaps at some point we might share that with the board, if in fact there is consensus around the concept, that we ought to be looking at all the money we spend in all of these areas and make sure that we're extending opportunities for the economic development of enterprises that are Grand Rapids based.
So, I guess the way I'm interpreting that, I guess, clarify if I misinterpret, but I'm interpreting that to say that as a board, obviously, when we review the appropriate policy to see if, from our perspective, if it's being adhered to, and if we have questions about how the policy, I guess, is being applied, then obviously bring those up for conversation, and maybe that's just the question itself. How is the policy fit in regards to not necessarily just blanket purchase orders, but, you know, I guess a myriad of things. You think of something? Yeah. So it sounds like that's maybe step one. And so we'll find out exactly what that policy is, and I'll even just try to send a link to us over the next couple of days, just so we can all read that and have whatever questions maybe to bring to the board after that. But as far as the aggregate blanket purchase amount, you just wanted the total.
The total.
Just to
Yeah.
get a rough sense of kind of percentage-wise, how much of the budget is being allocated to these blanket purchase orders.
Yes, well, that's two questions. One, the total, and then what percentage of the budget does that represent? Because there are some significant projects in here, and certainly, in some cases, some, I don't know what to call them, powerhouse, but certainly some traditional companies that provide those services, and again, you know, I'd like to, always trying to promote leveling the playing field for people who live in our city and contribute to this local economy. I think that's important.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Any other comments or questions about the blanket purchase renewals? No? All right. Donation Connect Ed.
We need action on that blanket purchase. to
Oh,
take to the board,
thank you.
so,
Yes, sir, we do. I had a motion to move the blanket purchase renewals to the full board.
So moved. Support.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Ober.
No problem. All right, we've got 3 donations that need your action also. The first is a donation to Burton Elementary from Apple Computer. It's actually a refresh of a contribution they made 4 years ago of devices to Burton Elementary, and they've come back now and want to donate refreshed devices, if you will, at a price of about $353,000. So again, we recommend that this body accept that donation.
Any comments or questions regarding the Apple donation to Burton Elementary?
I think it's an awesome program.
Yeah, it really is.
And there's no way in the world we would turn that down.
Yeah, exactly right.
I think it's great, so,
Wish you could do it district-wide.
yeah, district wide would be great.
Yeah.
So, I move approval.
Motion to approve?
So moved. Support.
Thank you. Okay, another donation.
Yeah, another other one is from Raymond and Janine Lanning to campus next door. This is I think this is the 3rd year of their donation. Just an individual who happened to run into our principal, I think in church a few years ago, and started talking to him and decided he wanted to do something for Campus Elementary School. So it's an $8,000 donation to be used, as you can see. Transportation for field trips, reward for students, carnival, student rewards, kind of fun stuff, if you will. And so again, I think it's the 3rd year of this, and we again would ask that this committee accept that donation also to Campus Elementary.
Comments, questions about that? No? Motion to move that to the full board?
So moved. Support.
Thank you.
And then the final one is to our Central High School Academy for Design and Construction. There are 2 $7,500 donations. The first is really through the ABC, Associated Builders and Contractors, which Ms. Schottke is an employee of, and they have a scholarship fund essentially set up. They accept donations, and so there are several members of that particular group, I think, that gave $500 apiece to a total of $7,500. And then, just last week, out of surprise, a Wolverine who provides has provided work boots and work clothing to our folks, decided they'd match that $7,500 with their own $7,500. So totals $15,000. They've both been committed. We got a big fake check. Whoops. But the real checks will be coming here the next week or so. But we'd ask that the committee would accept those two donations that total $15,000 for Innovation Central.
Yeah, well, so I do see in our packet, the notation is only for the 7,500 from, okay, and the matching. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize on that. All right, good deal. All right, any questions, comments? No. All right, motion to send that to the full board?
So moved.
All right, and supported by the, all right, thank you.
Item F in our action items is the Alight transition, and there's a little memo in your packet. We have been, for our employee health insurance administration, we've been using a company, initially a local company called Next Generation. They were acquired a couple of years ago by a national company called PlanSource. When I came on board 5 years ago, I looked into this and suggested at some point you probably look at bidding that out, because it had been, at that time, 5 or 6 years. There have been some service challenges, and then when they were acquired by the national firm, the challenges became more severe. So it's to the point where, one, we hadn't really bid out the service in about 10 years, and two, the service was just not up to our standards. So Aon, which have been our health insurance consultants for the last 4 years, we worked with them. We sent an RFP to 8 providers of these services. We received replies, proposals from 5 of them. We narrowed those 5 down to 3, and again, it's working with Aon and obviously our benefits and Sharon Pitts and myself, narrowed that down to 3 and did an interview. I actually had 2 of them come in, did presentation, did an interview for one that couldn't make it in, and decided on Alight that is a national presence, and will actually, looks like we'll save about $20,000 the first year in the base services. Once we get the approval, they'll start the transition. We'll stay with PlanSource through the remainder of the calendar year, and then come January 1st, we'll go with Alight if approved by you folks. But Alight will do our early enrollment process, which is usually late November through mid-November, in anticipation for the next year administration. So, anyways, our ask today is for this committee to approve executing the contract with Alight for the services. Again, Sharon Pitts and, well, all of us internally have reviewed the contract, are reviewing the contract, and once we get your approval, we can go ahead and execute that contract and move into the transition. Questions?
Any questions, Martha? No. All right. Motion to send the Alight transition to the full board.
So moved.
Thank you. Now we have a couple of easement resolutions.
Yeah, a couple of easements, and again, just for your approval to move to the full board. There will be a formal resolution that'll be in the packet on Monday for these things, as is required when we are essentially giving up ownership of some real property. But just a couple of small easements, one Sibley School, the city of Grand Rapids, the other one with DTE Energy at Brookside School. Ken has reviewed these, as have I, as has Sharon, actually, wording. Yeah, we think it's the best interest of both parties. It's not a big deal, but just want to make you aware of it and get your approval and move this forward to the board on Monday.
Any questions on either of the easements, or sidewalk, or under Plaster Creek, DT? Nope. All right. Motion to move that to the full board for approval.
So moved.
Consideration. Support?
Support.
All right, thank you, sir. And then,
Amendment 2. And I think I'm going to go in reverse order, get a couple of easy ones done first. So as we mentioned back in January, when we brought Amendment 1, that there would likely be an Amendment 2 about this time frame, and we do have that. So again, we're required to budget legally for the three of these major funds: the general fund, special revenue fund, which is essentially mostly our the special education center programs, which will go after this year, and food service, and then the debt retirement fund, which is a fund where we essentially accumulate and pay our debt service, our interest, and principal payments. So look at debt retirement first. There's just one small amendment, 2, and that's, look at Exhibit 1, the debt retirement fund.
Exhibit 1 or Exhibit A?
Exhibit 1 of debt retirement fund.
Oh, of debt. Okay, hold on a second then.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you look on the revenue and expenditure side, you'll see it under the Amendment 2 column, middle column, you'll see a $652,545 amount.
You both have it?
Everybody with me on that?
Okay, yep. All right.
That amendment relates specifically to the 2019 bonds that we just issued and closed on 2 weeks ago. That is the amount of the bond issuance costs, so it's legal fees, it's accounting fees, it's underwriting costs, our financial advisor fees, insurance, bond insurance fees that are paid out of the bond funds themselves, and that is that adjustment. So you just see money coming in with 652 and money going out for those individual fees of 652. So that is pretty simple. Back in January, we adjusted for interest earnings on that, but we see no change in that for the remainder of the year here. So I would request that this move to the board on Monday for their approval of Amendment 2 for the debt retirement fund.
So, then you're offering that each amendment has its own action?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So specifically, right now, this is the only one for debt retirement?
Yeah, I'll get this out of the way one at a time, if that's okay
Okay.
with you.
All right, so for debt retirement then, and actually I just realized instead of asking for a motion, I should just ask who's in favor of moving the debt retirement amendment to the full board consideration, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the Special Revenue Fund, again, most of the operations relate to the special education center programs and the food service fund. We just had some minor adjustments to true up where we think things are going to come at the end of the year. The total impact on fund balance for that account is just $128,000 actually increase in the fund balance. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions on any of those adjustments. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, and just minor amounts.
And again, the primary piece for the special revenue fund, say that again, I'm sorry.
There are actually 4 accounts, 4 funds within that. The 2 biggest, the special education center programs, and that's a program that's going to the ISD beginning of July 1st. Food service is the other large one in there. We also have GRASP and Hausman Field, which are smaller funds. Food service we're obviously retaining. That's predominantly federal, actually all federal dollars. So next year we lose a fund, but we'll talk about when we bring the budget in a couple of weeks. But there's actually going to be an additional fund we're going to add to that because of an accounting change we'll talk about. Not near as large as what we're losing, so.
But the amendment we're considering today is just specific in regards to the special ed and,
No, it's the whole special revenue fund, yeah.
okay, so
But most of the adjustments, Amendment 2, are specific only to the special ed
Okay, that's fine.
and the food service. The other 2 funds had no Amendment 2s. I think they may have had small amendment one, for amendment ones, but nothing for amendment two, just the special ed and food service.
Maybe it'd be beneficial to highlight, I know you and I talked, but highlight the, what those adjustments are for the food services.
Yeah, most of it's just adjusting our personnel costs to everything things going to come out. Both of those funds, we had open positions all year round, and so it's a matter of some we didn't fill. Ones we didn't fill, we try to get outside services in. Some we were successful, some we were not. So really, it's just truing up mostly our people costs.
And that's
I think of the food service, there may have been some small adjustments to the actual food costs, but nothing significant. It's mostly employee-related cost.
Yeah, okay,
Is that true, Rhonda? Yeah.
okay. Any questions from either of you on the special revenue fund amendments? Okay, so that was their retirement, special revenue, and then what do we have next?
The big one, the general fund.
Yes.
Again, the general fund is obviously our main operating fund for the district, and it consists of Board of Education dollars. We look at it kind of two areas, and then what we call the grant dollars, which are private grants and title programs, at-risk dollars from the state. Those are the major, and then various private donors, like XQ as an example. If you look on, sorry, I don't have page numbers on this, but you'll see a sheet looks like this, which has individual adjustments by line item. If you look at that, let's focus on that first, which kind of summarizes what's happening here. So everyone got that front page? Okay, at the very top of that, you'll see the impact on fund balance, and starts out with the fund balance at the end of last year, which is about almost 15 million, 14.9 million. The original budget adoption that this body adopted back in June of last year used about 2.46 million of that fund balance. The Amendment 1 used another 2.1 million, and then Amendment 2 is looking to use about just over $1 million worth. And I believe, Cindy, they have the fund balance, and you might want to pull that out too to take a look at it. We should have a long colored sheet, which gives you a history of the fund balance. You've seen this analysis before. So the very last column, point that to you right now, the blue shaded column is the fund balance and the early warning calculation after Amendment 2, if it's adopted, takes place. So at the very bottom of that fund balance, you'll see we're still above the 5% minimum at 6.31. But if you look at some of the individual adjustments that make up Amendment 1 for the general fund, on the first page, just below the impact on fund balance, is the revenue adjustments broken out between local, state, and federal. We had some adjustments to, again, as time has gone on since February or since January of this year, and collections on property taxes, we adjusted that upward about $100,000. The Act 18, which is a countywide special education millage, decreased by $224,000. Enhancement millage down a little bit, about $50,000. I think that's primarily related to the enhancement millage is distributed based on student count, proportionate within the county, and our student count has gone down a bit, so we're losing a few dollars because of that, about $50,000. We had additional Medicaid dollars we were made aware of, increased $950,000. In the grants column, you see a decrease in the XQ grant. That's just timing differences. The first couple of years of XQ grant on the XQ side was a little messy in terms of how they've actually the first 2.5 years. They also changed the grant year. It had been on a calendar year basis, beginning July, this July 1st, they changed it to match our fiscal year, so it'll be a July. So there were some accounting adjustments to reflect that, but those dollars don't go away. They just flip-flop between years, if you will. Under the state sources, additional adjustments to membership revenue. Most of that, I believe, is related to the Section 25 loss. We lost about 32 FTE. Section 25 are the students that are in our district at the fall count and then end up someplace else after the fall count. And we had a net loss of just over 32 FTEs related to that. Section 25 is the code that comes under. Some small increases in some of the revenue we had, Section 24, which is a
Jail revenue, right? Pardon me?
It's not the jail anymore, but it's
Yeah.
that type
that type of, yeah.
of court place children.
Thank you. Some itinerant revenue increases. 147E is the retirement plan offset money we get. And then we had, in the grant column there, we had some decreases in revenue. And that's, again, primarily timing differences where we're not going to spend the dollars in this fiscal year. We'll carry forward into the next fiscal year. So we'll reduce the revenue this year, also reduce the expenses, and pick them up next year. And then just a couple of, in the general operation column, the federal sources, a small $20,000 decrease in ROTC revenue, and then some increases in title dollars related to federal sources. So all said, and again, the grants column, and a minor adjustment to the athletics column of 12,000 up in the local sources. Again, the grants column that has no impact on fund balance. Whatever we receive in grant dollars, whatever the source, we spend that amount. So that has no impact on fund balance. Only general operations and actually the athletics have an impact on our fund balance. So for general operations, we had a total, actually net increase of revenues of about $479,000 in the general operations section. You can see the total decreases in the grants and athletics sections. Let me stop there a minute and entertain any questions that you may have on any of those revenue source we talked about.
Need to digest, any thoughts? No, no.
Okay, and then the next section there is in the same format as the impact on the expense side of the ledger, if you will. A lot of this in both the instruction and support services, as typically is the case in most years with our amendments related to employee costs, based on where we think we're finally going to come out. As I said earlier, we budget for a certain number of FTE employees. We usually throw in a little bogey about in terms of unable to fill all our positions, So as we get into the last month or two of the year, we have a better sense. Obviously, if there's some positions we've had out there all year and they still haven't been filled, we're not going to fill them by the end of the year. And so we made some adjustments to reflecting that very first line, salary and benefit adjustments. You see an increase of 518 general operations in the grant area, 868,000. Small decrease in substitute costs, tuition costs, our center-based special ed students, we get billed back for when that's the program we've been managing for all these years, and we continue to help reduce costs of that center program, and so it's reduced tuition not only to us, but all the other local districts within the ISD who have students at the center programs. So in the instructional area, we can increase costs about $336,500 on the general operations, $561 in the grants area. Support services, you'll see some similar adjustments related to first line there again, salary and benefit adjustments and support services. Some additional costs related to Go Math. Go Math is a new math program that we acquired this year. And so there were some additional learning costs that actually we're budgeting into next year that we need to bring back into the current year and then Montessori training, it's $349,000. Repair and maintenance costs, this has been a challenging year. The rough winter there, last six weeks of the winter, all the snow we were getting and the wear and tear on our snow removal equipment was brutal. I will tell you, Dawn, our risk manager, said she's been here a long time. It's one of the worst years we've had for repair and maintenance expense on assets. So hopefully just a fluke, but most of that and the adjustment for Amendment 2 was because most of that happened after Amendment 1 back in January. Some adjustments to purchase services. The financial software implements at Power Schools. We came to you, I think, last month or 2 months ago for increase in that amount. That reflects, the Amendment 2 reflects that increase. Utility costs, our cold winter resulted in higher utility costs. Minor costs related to vehicle maintenance and supply. And then some miscellaneous other adjustments there. So on the general operations side, increase in expenditures of about 1.1 million. And then the other category, just some small adjustments on the general operations side, and then the grant side, that's just to reduce the expenditures for the reduced revenue that will be pushed into next year. And so all told, the total impact on the general fund is $854,407 expense side, but again, it'll use about almost 1.1 million of fund balance when it's all said and done. So questions on any of that?
And again, just for clarity, that 1.1 or so from the, is a combination of the 854 on the expense side and the negative 233.
Actually, it's a combination of the $1,566,000 on the expense side. Just look at the general operations, the first column. See the $1,566,000?
Yeah. But
And
that was,
offset by additional revenue on the front page of $479,000.
okay, gotcha,
Okay.
gotcha.
And a little bit in the athletics, but the grants column is a net zero on fund balance.
Yeah. All right.
I have a question with regards to the other adjustments under support services. Given that significant amount, what is some of the details of those other adjustments?
What line you looking at specifically?
It's right above the total support services on page 6.
Yep. The 1.1 million?
The 90,
98.
Oh, 98. Oh, 98
Yes.
woman. Rhonda, do you have that detail?
I was gonna say, it's a lot of small changes and a lot of different accounts, so I go through and pick up anything that's usually between 15 and 20,000 individual lines. And those get those separate line items, and the other ones, I mean, it's a lot of really small stuff going back and forth.
So what are some of the larger ones?
Out of the 98, would have been in the salary line.
Probably some supplies adjustment.
That's what I was gonna say, I mean, some conference lines, some of the buildings will put stuff down in field trips or whatever, and decide they need it, and teaching supplies.
We have, each building has a, if you will, a principal's account that's funded, and every year we always have a number of buildings that spend over that limit, so that's probably likely some adjustments related, and then 98,000 related to that. As we, again, as we sit here, we do Amendment 2, we're through 10 months of our year, and we can see where some of that stuff is falling out.
And what exactly is the principal accounts dollar amounts that it's been exceeded? I mean, what is their starting and then what's?
Well,
what are we
we have 47 schools, and they all have a different.
They're a different amount?
Yeah, a different amount depending on, so we don't have the individual amounts.
So I'm assuming that different amount is based on, one, obviously, school population.
Yeah, school pie, obviously, and, high school,
I'm
middle
sure
school,
Kane
elementary
secondary
school,
versus
different, yeah,
elementary
yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah, there's, yep.
Dr. Flores, anything?
No?
Ms. Williams, thinking anything else? Or you wanna keep scrolling through for a bit there?
I'm good. I just, I don't know if that's something that we can get ahead of time in the future. All of the other adjustments were rarely insignificant, but that one was quite a lot. To not have any details about is a little bit concerning for me for that type of adjustment. Maybe I'm just new to this, but that's
right.
nearly $1 million. I'd like to know more about that instead of just other adjustments.
No such thing as, no, feel free, ask away for sure. No, I'll encourage you, definitely. So, that's enough encouragement for you, keep it going, for sure.
Yeah, so that's all I have right now.
Now, I think maybe I'm a little lost, though. You said it was almost $1 million, and I thought we were talking about the 98,000.
Excuse me, 100,000.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, that's fine.
I mean,
No,
that
still
might be-
ask away, though.
Right, but that
100,000.
might be
That's fine.
minor to such a large
No,
budget that
still
we
ask
have,
away, though. I
but
just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something in the conversation, that's all. Okay. But I think it's still, to your point, though, maybe when we does come to the full board, maybe, Mr. Ogles, if you could maybe just offer maybe what some of the kind of possible
Sure.
big ticket items might be in
Sure.
that area,
Yeah.
wouldn't hurt for sure. Okay, anything else from either of you in regards to the budget amendment? Any other questions, comments? No? All right, all in favor of moving that to the full board for consideration, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. Thank you. So now, reports, updates, discussion. And could you toss me that box of Kleenex by seasonal Andrews you get?
Yes, actually, I'll walk it. April financial statements are part of your packet there, the financial dashboard. You just went over where we thought things are going to end up for the end of the year. So that's just a snapshot through April. The 2019 annual budget column at the end there is the current after Amendment 1. So if Amendment 2, when that's approved on Monday, we will reflect that in that annual budget column. So if anybody has any questions
Any
on
questions
the
about the April statements?
financials. Then again, behind that dashboard report is all the details
Yeah.
you may want to look into, so.
Okay. Guess we can move to warm, safe, and dry.
Yeah, warm, safe, and dry, I just mentioned, we're gonna finance that out of, or the finance East Leonard roof out of dollars. I think we'll still have some money left over after that point in time. But that's, as Ken has mentioned before, we'll hang on to that for these kinds of things that come up that we can use it for. Since that warm, safe, and dry, Ms. Williams, I don't remember if we mentioned, but that expired in 2016. So because we had issued bonds, we didn't ask for renewal at that point in time. So bond construction update. Things are moving well at the Southwest Community campus high school. We have begun in earnest now the work at Ottawa Hills, obviously with school ending on Friday. We'll see a lot more work going on in our construction projects. I believe the Union High School notice for bid is already out in the streets. And Cheryl will be in first week in June, next week? I think the bid opening's next week for Union High School. And so I think our plan would be to bring a selection or a vendor for that work at our June Finance Committee meeting. Then we're continuing the air conditioning installations at the elementary school, including North Park. That'll start up once the clean is completed, which is scheduled to be completed on June 14th. And then not only will we complete the air conditioning installation at North Park, but that had also been slated to have a new secure entrance done. We're going to do that at the same time, so you get it all done at once instead of go back later and do that. So the plan right now, we actually met with Chrisman last week, and they get that all done in time for school to be open on August 20th or 21st of this year. Then, once we get Union up and going, we'll take a little bit of a breather, and then start looking at what we want to do with Central High School, which, being in an historic district, that's going to be a little more challenging. Ken is still trying to hire an architect to run the programs. We're getting a lot of help from Plant Moran, which has been helpful. I don't know, I mentioned that we closed the bond on May 14th, so those dollars are in the bank. And so everything's, from that perspective, is moving ahead, moving forward.
Okay.
Any questions on the bond?
Be enough.
Okay. The next item there is just our Dream Fund process is any individual Dream Fund grants that are between $2,500 and $10,000. New process that myself and Mary Jo Coleman can approve, but we report to the board there was only one of $7,000 for Union High School for a raised garden extension of the greenhouse project. That was approved and funded since last Finance Committee meeting, so just report that. And then item E of the report update is the North Park cleanup contract. The whole North Park situation was declared an emergency, so we were allowed to get a cleanup crew in without going through the normal bid process, although we did go through a bid process. Nova, who were our consultants, I think sent out proposals to 4 or 5. Has to be a licensed asbestos cleanup, so it's just not anybody can go to. And we got 4 proposals ranging from $620,000 to actually over $1 million. And we selected Global Green Services Group for the $620,000, and they actually began their cleanup on May 20th. As I said, they are assured us they will be done on the 14th. Now, part of I know you've been getting updates from John and the superintendent on that. There is a staff and then a parent meeting in North Park today to talk about the process, the cleanup process, and how that's going to go. There's personal items that were left in the building, and those need to be cleaned and retrieved, and we're still working through some of the logistics. And then, so that's there's still a lot to do there, let me tell you. So that's going on, and we'll have more clarification of the parents, as I said, at 6 o'clock at their meeting. But we're required by board policy when we select a vendor in the emergency purchasing to inform the board. With the written communications, that's what that little memorandum is to fulfill the requirements of Board Policy 3610, in case you wanted to look it up. So, any questions on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Under the policy section, if you mind me going, if we keep going forward here?
Please.
Okay, Chair. You've heard me talk about this last couple of meetings. On May 17th was the consensus revenue agreement executive summary, or agreement meeting. The executive summary is included in your packet. It's really I guess the third page, titled May 2019 Consensus Forecast, that really summarizes, and really, in a nutshell, the general fund projected revenue for the remainder of the fiscal year showed an increase from where it was, what they had projected back at the January consensus meeting. The school aid fund, which is important to us, obviously, actually showed a decrease compared to January. So you look at the middle column there, fiscal year 2020, under the net revenue estimates, it's table 2. You'll see the general fund had an increase from January, 59.1 million. School aid fund, a decrease of almost $87 million since January. So a combined between the two of about $28 million less than what they were projecting back in January. We're still looking at increases year over year, and then you can see the last column there is their projections for fiscal year 2021, early projections at least. So down below, one other thing I mentioned, you see that school aid index calculation there? That's actually in the legislation for Proposal A. That's to be used as a guidance, and it's basically they multiply this revenue adjustment factor by the pupil membership factor to get a school aid index. You can see for fiscal year 2020, it's 1.0268. That would indicate that the foundation allowance should be increased about 2.7% over the current year. I will tell you, I'm not sure, at least over the last 10 or 12 years, that index, again, it's to be used as guide, not as, I don't think that we've had an increase in our foundation allowance that's been equal to that index calculation. Most years it's been below that. I think this last year may have been right about at that. As it relates to the whole budget situation, nothing has changed a whole lot since we talked last. We still have not seen a budget from the House. The Senate and the governor are still out there. Of course, the governor is still pushing for the 45-cent gas tax to really fund what she needs to do. The one, I guess, movement, if you will, has an impact on the overall budget, potentially on the school aid fund. As you probably heard, there was no-fault insurance legislation that was passed on Friday that will essentially reduce rates to all of us. That may be a bargaining chip as it relates to the school aid and the 45-cent gas tax. At the KSBO meeting this morning, we had Chris Glass, the county's lobbyist, spoke to us briefly. Again, he thinks now that we may have a actual budget in at least agreed to mid-July. Again, that doesn't help us since you have to have it and approve it by end of June, and we're actually scheduled to bring it to you on the work session on June 10th. We're probably looking at, his best guess right now is at least a minimum 150, because the governor is obviously big in education and big on roads. And so that's one of the reasons we're delaying our budget, trying to get more information on the revenue side. We have some expense side things we're dealing with also, but so we're not quite sure. There's still money there. We still should get an increase, but we're still not quite sure. And as we went around the table this morning with the other business managers that were there, there were people that they had budgets at, $100 increases, some at $180 increases. So it's kind of all over the board now in terms of what people are thinking, and we're all dealing with the same uncertainty and as to what to put in there type stuff. So the other part of that proposal, the next page, you'll see the They do a pupil membership estimate also. And if you look at that particular analysis, you'll see that 2018-19, they're projecting a decrease of almost 14,000 students from a year ago. Next year, another 11,000 decrease in number of students. And then in 2021, another 8,400. You'll also notice that the public school academies, which are really the charter schools, you'll see that this year just a minor increase. The next 2 years are actually looking at decreases even to the charter schools. Fact is, we've talked about this before, the number of school-age students in the state continues to decrease, and so we're all seeing losses in enrollment because the kids just aren't there anymore. That's all there is to it. So, any questions on any of that?
No, I guess you guys need to start having more children.
Not me.
No, I don't have
Yeah.
any questions either. Dr. Ford, Ms. Williams? No.
Okay, then the very last thing in the other category, we were just notified, I think last week, of a new grant, a new state grant we received, jointly funded from the MDE and Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We applied for it back last fall. We're actually already in, the grant year started September 1st. We just found out about it, as I said, about a week or two ago. But what it does is it funds 3 mental health, master's level behavioral health providers in 3 of our middle schools, City, Riverside, and Alger. So $100,000 for guaranteed for 2 years. They mentioned we're already in the first year, but we obviously won't spend that $100,000. The grant year ends on September 30th, but that's be able to carry forward. So they are looking at ways to continue the funding beyond year 2, so it would not fall in the individual school district. So because it is a state grant, it doesn't require the same approval, if you will, or acceptance. It's just like at-risk dollars where it comes from the state. And I just wanted to inform you that that $600,000 over 2 years for 3 of our schools in an area that you're well aware that we really need help in the whole mental health area. So it's great. And Kim Barron, the district's health director, and our grant writer, Alex did a great job in applying for this and making sure we got the dollars. So we're all excited. Challenges, of course, is to try to hire these professionals, which are difficult. I think I've mentioned before, I sit on the county's community mental health board, and we have trouble hiring them for that group. So it's just difficult situation, but we'll do our best. And we have some, they have to be licensed, but they can be social workers, they can be psychologists. I don't fully understand the licensing situation, but we have some options, just being able to find the folks and get them in place in time. So I think that's all that I have. I don't know if there's anything else that the committee members may have.
I have nothing.
So,
No, I'm good.
okay,
Question?
great.
Well, thank you for the overview, the insight. I guess this meeting is adjourned. Thanks. Thank you very much.